growing up, I always felt like the wallpaper in my own home, always there but never really noticed. It's not like I was expecting parades in my honor every day, but a little acknowledgement would have been nice. If you ever wanted to know what being invisible felt like, you should have dropped by my house during one of my sick spells. Trust me, it wasn't like those TV shows where the sick kid gets pampered and fussed over. Nah, in my case, it was more like being part of the furniture. Useful but not really something you pay much attention to unless it's in your way. One time, right before midterms during my junior year, I caught the flu bad. I'm talking about the real deal, the kind that knocks you flat and makes you wish you could just sleep through the whole miserable experience. Now, usually, a sick kid would mean a change in the daily rhythm of the house, right? Well, not in mine. It started on a Monday. I remember because I tried to get up for school and nearly collapsed back into bed. I was burning up, my head felt like it was being squeezed in a vice, and every limb in my body ached like I'd run a marathon the day before. So there I was, a snotty, feverish mess, barely able to shout a weak mom towards the door as she hustled about getting Sharon ready for her big dance audition. "Can you check on me?" I croaked out as she passed by my room, her hands full of Sharon's sparkly dance costumes and makeup kits. "I think I'm really sick." She poked her head in, her forehead wrinkled, more in annoyance than concern. "Just take some aspirin and try to get some rest, honey. I don't have time right now. Sharon's audition is today, and we're already late." And with that, she was gone. The front door slammed shut minutes later, the sound echoing weirdly in the empty house. It was just me, alone, feeling like crap, and suddenly very aware of just how low I ranked on the family priority list. For the next 3 days, my room became my little quarantine zone. I drifted in and out of feverish sleep, waking up occasionally to the sounds of the house. Sharon practicing her routines, the clatter of dishes, the muffled tones of my parents discussing everything and anything but me. One night, I lay there listening as they went on about how Sharon's audition went, her chances of getting the lead role, and what they'd do to celebrate if she got it. It wasn't like they completely ignored me. Mom would pop her head in once in a while, remind me to drink water, maybe leave some soup on the nightstand if I was awake. But it was all done in a sort of automatic check-the-box way that made me feel more like a chore than a daughter. Then there was Sharon. Look, I know it sounds like I'm painting her as the villain here, but she's not. She's just caught up in her world, a world where she's the star and I'm not even sure I'm in the cast. When she did come in to see how I was doing, it was usually on her way out, her sympathy quick and rehearsed before she dashed off to meet friends or attend another practice. "Hope you're feeling better now," she'd say, not really asking because she didn't plan to stay long enough to hear the answer. It was during one of those sick days, though, that something shifted for me. It was a Wednesday, and I was lying there, staring at the ceiling, the house quiet except for the distant sound of Sharon practicing. I started thinking about all those paintings I'd done, stacked up against the walls of my room, scenes filled with color and life, and how, in contrast, my real world felt so gray and muted. Birthdays in my house were kind of a big deal, well, at least when it was Sharon's. Mine, on the other hand, always seemed like an afterthought, which was especially tough since our birthdays were just one day apart. Yeah, you heard that right. While she got the red carpet treatment, mine was more like a last-minute errand my parents remembered the night before. This year, though, was supposed to be different. It was my 18th, a milestone, right? Finally hitting that magic number where you're supposed to be an adult. I wasn't expecting a blowout or anything, but I thought maybe this time, things might tilt a bit in my favor. Even just a little. I should have known better. I decided to take matters into my own hands. If history had taught me anything, it was that sitting around waiting to be disappointed was no way to live. So, I planned my own little celebration. Nothing fancy. Just a dinner with a few close friends at a local bistro I'd been eyeing for a while. The place was cool, kinda quirky and laid back. Just my style. They even had this little rooftop area where you could eat under the stars if the weather was good. I pitched the idea to Mom a week before. I caught her in one of her rare slow moments, in between organizing Sharon's dance life and her charity work. "Hey Mom, for my birthday, I was thinking maybe we could do a dinner? Just something small at that bistro downtown. I already checked and they've got space." She looked up, slightly surprised that I was planning my own thing. "Oh, that sounds nice, dear. Sure, we can do that." It was the first time in a long time I felt like I'd managed to get her full attention, even if it was just for a moment. Energized by this small win, I went all out. I booked the table, planned the menu with the restaurant manager, who was super cool about making sure we had options for everyone, and even sent out invites to my friends and family. As the day got closer, I felt that familiar knot of anticipation in my stomach. Not just for the party, but to see if it would actually turn out like I hoped. The night before, I laid out my outfit, a new shirt I'd bought specially. Nothing fancy, but it made me feel good. I went to bed with a weird mix of nerves and excitement. Felt like maybe, just maybe, this birthday would be different. The day itself started off well enough. I got texts from my friends saying they were excited for the evening. I spent the day just chilling, saving up my energy for the night. Mom and Dad even wished me a happy birthday in the morning, which, was something. I showed up at the bistro a bit early, not wanting to seem too eager, but also because I couldn't wait to get the night started. The staff had set up the rooftop just like I'd asked, with lights strung up and everything. It looked amazing, and for a brief, shining moment, I felt like everything was going to be perfect. 7 p.m. rolled around, the time we had agreed on, and I was there, waiting. The view from the rooftop was great. The weather was perfect, and I was ready to have the best birthday. But the 7:15 came, then 7:30, and I was still standing there, alone. I kept checking my phone, but there were no messages, no calls, nothing. The staff at the bistro were giving me those sympathetic looks that just made it worse. They'd ask if I wanted to start with a drink or maybe sit down, but I kept saying, just a few more minutes. They'll be here. By 8 o'clock, the reality had sunk in. I wasn't just being paranoid. Nobody was coming. Not my friends. Not my family. Nobody. The weight of that realization was like a punch to the gut. I felt stupid standing there, all dressed up with nowhere to go, surrounded by empty chairs that seemed to mock me with their vacancy. I ended up sitting down, more to stop the waiters from looking so worried than anything else. I ordered food, mostly out of a need to do something, to fill the silence around me with the clatter of plates and the murmur of other diners who were actually enjoying their evenings. As I sat there, picking at food I no longer wanted, the hurt started to give way to anger. Why was it always like this? Why was I always the afterthought, the one whose feelings didn't seem to matter? I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't notice the time slipping away, the sky darkening around me until the stars were out, witnesses to my pathetic solo party. I made the decision to call Sharon, hoping she might have some answers. Maybe something happened? Maybe they got the date mixed up? She picked up on the second ring. "Hey, where's everyone?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though my heart was pounding. She was at home. I was totally perplexed. "Wait, what?" I asked, feeling my stomach twist into knots. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," she said, her voice light and casual, "but we had to call off the celebration. Mom wasn't feeling well." I was stunned. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Sharon sighed. "I guess I just forgot to tell you." It was like a slap in the face. They hadn't even bothered to warn me ahead of time. And here I was, sitting at the restaurant alone. I tried to process her words, to make sense of them. "Is Mom okay? Can we still do something later?" I asked, still clinging to some hope that maybe the night wasn't completely ruined. Sharon's response was cold. "I really have to go now." And then she just hung up on me. I sat there in shock, my phone still in my hand. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. I tried to stay calm, tried to breathe. I had spent so much time planning this night, putting in so much effort, only to be left with nothing. Trying not to cry, I looked around the restaurant. I watched groups of friends and families enjoying their meals together, their laughter and conversations making my loneliness feel even more suffocating. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone walking through the entrance. I glanced up, expecting yet another stranger. But instead, it was my grandfather. I assumed my mom had invited everyone, so I wasn't expecting him to show up. The sight of a familiar face honestly startled and relieved me. "Happy birthday," he said with a kind smile as he approached. As he got closer, I felt a wave of emotion crash over me. I got up and hugged him tightly. It was one of those hugs you need, the kind that holds you together when everything else is falling apart. He pulled back and looked around. "Where is everyone?" he asked, glancing at the empty table. That was it. I had been fighting back tears all night, trying to hold it together, but hearing him ask that simple question was like breaking a dam. I burst into tears. Right there, in the middle of the restaurant. My cheeks burned red as I tried to choke out the words between sobs. I told him everything. How I had come early, how nobody showed up, how Sharon had casually mentioned that the party was canceled after I had been sitting there waiting for hours. I told him how, on my day, I had been left alone, forgotten, abandoned. He listened, really listened. And when I was done, he placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I had no idea. If I had known, I would have been here sooner." His voice was heavy with sadness. His eyes filled with something I rarely saw, anger. He was furious. Not at me, at them. I saw the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands tightened into fists at his sides. "Come on," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Let's make this a real birthday dinner." So we sat down. He ordered food. We talked. He told me jokes and stories from his day to cheer me up. It wasn't the birthday I had planned, but somehow, it was better than sitting there alone. For the first time that night, I didn't feel invisible. When we got home that evening, I was still feeling raw. All I wanted to do was crawl into my room and forget the night ever happened. But then I heard shouting, coming from the living room. I paused, my stomach twisting. My grandfather was arguing with my mom, and he was livid. "How dare you treat her like this?" he demanded. Do you have any idea how much you've hurt her? My mom fired back, her voice full of anger and defensiveness. Oh please, you're really going to turn this into a big deal. I stood there, frozen, listening as my grandfather ripped into her. For me, for once, someone was standing up for me. But then my mother turned to me, her eyes cold. What did you say to him? She hissed. I didn't even flinch. The truth, I said simply, her face twisted with rage. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to end well. The morning after my disastrous birthday, the house felt different, colder. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. Instead, everything was about Sharon. I came downstairs and saw the kitchen in full-blown party prep mode. My mom was bustling around, cooking up a storm, smiling, laughing. The table was covered in decorations. The smell of freshly baked cake filled the air. For Sharon's birthday, the contrast hit me like a slap in the face. I stood there, frozen, watching as my mother, who couldn't be bothered to even text me the night before, was now acting like nothing had happened, like I didn't exist. The hurt was unbearable. I turned on my heel and went back upstairs, grabbed a bag, and packed a few things. I didn't even want to be in that house. I spent the night at my best friend's house, where I was actually wanted. And the worst part? No one called. Not my mom. Not my dad. Not even Sharon. It was like I had never existed to them in the first place. I should have seen what was coming next. A few days later, I came home hoping maybe, just maybe, there would be some kind of reconciliation. Instead, my mother immediately started yelling. Over what, you ask? The dishes. Yeah. Apparently, I had forgotten to do the dishes before I left that night. That was her breaking point. She exploded. You're so ungrateful. You never help around the house. You don't appreciate anything we do for you, she screamed. I just stood there, letting it all sink in. All these years of neglect, all the times I was ignored, all the moments I was made to feel less. And this was what made her finally acknowledge me? The damn dishes? At first, I tried to keep calm. Mom, it was one night. I was upset. You didn't even tell me my birthday party was canceled. She cut me off, screaming even louder. And that's when I snapped. I let it all out. All the years of being treated like an afterthought. All the times I had to watch Sharon be worshipped while I was ignored. All the times they made plans without me, canceled things without telling me, or just straight up forgot about me. I told her everything. And then, get out. Her voice was ice cold. If you hate it here so much, then leave. I blinked. She actually meant it. I looked at my dad, expecting something, a sign that maybe he disagreed, that maybe he'd stand up for me. But he just sat there, silent, like he always did. I let out a breath and nodded. Fine. I grabbed my bag, the same one I had packed a few days ago, turned around, and walked out. And just like that, I was homeless. I went straight to my best friend's house. She let me stay as long as I needed. She didn't ask for details. She just hugged me and said, "You're not alone." But I knew I couldn't stay there forever. So I called the one person who had actually cared about me that night. My grandfather. When I told him what happened, he lost it. Are you kidding me? They kicked you out? Over what? I told him everything. The fight, the birthday disaster, the years of neglect. And he just listened. Then he said the words I didn't realize I had been desperate to hear. You don't have to go back there. You have a home with me, sweetheart. Come stay with me. And that was it. I had a home, not just a place to exist. A place where I was actually wanted. A week later, my grandfather went with me to my parents' house to get my stuff. I was nervous. I hadn't seen them since they threw me out, and I had no idea how they were going to act. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. We walked into my room, and it was empty. Everything was gone. Clothes? Gone. Books? Gone. The paintings I had worked so hard on? Gone. I stood there, staring at the blank walls, my heart hammering in my chest. Where is all my stuff? I finally asked, my voice shaking. My mother just laughed. Oh, we donated it. Figured you wouldn't need it. Couldn't believe it. They had taken everything, years of my life, and just gotten rid of it like trash. My heart broke. I turned to my dad. You let this happen? He shrugged. You left. Like that was some kind of justification. My grandfather lost it. He ripped into them, telling them they were cruel, selfish, disgusting. This is your daughter. How could you treat her like this? But they just laughed. Like my pain was some kind of joke to them. At that moment, I knew. There was nothing left for me in that house. Nothing but pain. I turned to my grandfather. Let's go. And we left. I was devastated. But my grandfather, bless him, didn't let me spiral. He took me shopping, replacing the necessities they had stolen from me. You're starting fresh, he said. You don't need their leftovers. My best friend pitched in too, giving me clothes, school supplies, whatever I needed. I wasn't alone. And that was what mattered. With my grandfather's help, I moved into my college dorm. I started fresh. No more walking on eggshells. No more feeling like a burden in my own home. And you know what? I thrived. My art flourished. My confidence grew. I built a life where I was valued, where I wasn't an afterthought, where I mattered. And my parents? They never called, never checked in, not even once. That should have hurt. But honestly, I felt free, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was finally seen.